We're happy to have as our speaker today Dr. John Swails III. He was born into a family of teachers. His father taught in college as well as serving as a local pastor. His mother taught in elementary and middle school. No doubt their influence and lifelong background in education had much to do with his becoming a teacher. Dr. Swails received his master's degree from Brandeis University and a master's and PhD from the University of Georgia. He also studied at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. In response to his love for Israel and the Bible, his own education focused initially on the ancient Near East and the study of a variety of ancient languages and texts. Later, he would finish his PhD in the modern Middle East. His present focus is the history of the modern Middle East and the impact of radical Islam. Dr. Swails began his career at Oral Roberts University in August of 1993. He and his wife, Joy, have 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. Their youngest, a son, was born in Jerusalem. Please help me welcome Dr. Swails as our guest speaker.
Thank you. George emailed me a reminder for this, but he emailed it to my son, John, who is now in the Southern Sudan right now with a Special Forces group. So my son had to forward it to me, and he said, "What is this all about, Dad?" I said, "Mind your own business, send it along." So I have 2 in the Special Forces. John is there now, and Joel is going to Tanzania 2 weeks. So they're going all around. Little editorial note, and lad, I want you staying awake this time, not sleeping like you did in my class. No, he didn't, but I thought I'd take a shot at him when he could fight back. Editorial note, Dr. Fonsteel, I see you, yeah. We're living in a very interesting time. Jesus' own description of the end of the age in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. In Matthew 24, it says that the end of the age is going to be marked by one factor, definitely, and that is deceit. A deceit so powerful, he said that if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. Now, the elect are not going to be deceived, not because we're so smart, but because he's overseeing us with the spirit of truth. So we're living in an age where that spirit of deceit is operating as never before. What matters now is not the facts, the truth. What matters is the narrative, and that means that a spin has to be put on the facts to fit the narrative. So we see that increasing in a way that we haven't seen since Austria and Germany in the 1930s. And we see, in fact, I wrote an article this week about the comments about Trump's speech at the Republican National Convention. You know, I watched it. It's a long speech. It was good in many respects. It was repetitive. He kept coming back to the same thing, and he phrased it, could have been written better. But I posted 14 different comments from media outlets, and every one of them used the word dark. Anybody see that? It was a dark speech. And I thought, well, I didn't hear anything dark about it at all. But that's the meme, that's the theme, that's the sort of narrative that they're going to push. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Goldwater and Johnson in 1964. So, yeah, we got a few old guys. So that's what they did with Goldwater. They established a theme and pushed it so that Johnson would be elected. Now, you know, I don't know where you are, but when you have the mainstream media with their lying basis coming against a person, it makes me say, well, wait a minute. I don't want to go along with him just because I don't want to go along with him, just to spite that. so it's dark. And I was put in mind of Winston Churchill. That's one of the gifts of studying history. You can put things in a different perspective. Churchill got up in the House of Commons in May of 1940 and gave a speech. We remember that speech because it ends with these words, said, let us bear ourselves, embrace ourselves to our duty that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, what? This was their finest hour. You remember that, right? Well, Geoffrey Dawson, his nemesis and archenemy over at the Times of London, wrote the very next day, said it was a nice little warlike speech. And I thought, you've got these detractors all along, and if we don't have some perspective, we're in a time, by the way, where the United States has advanced beyond a level where any one person or group of people can save it. I don't want to scare you, I'm just telling you a fact. We've come to a point where only the Almighty intervening in our lives and in our country can save the United States. Franklin Graham said the other day, and I agree with him completely, it's never going to be the same. The United States has changed, and it's never going to be the same. Only the Almighty can save it. And he keeps telling me in my private devotion that he is going to save the United States. The United States will be saved. It'll be different, but maybe it'll be better. The real issue for us is the key to that, the Lord getting into the country, is through the church. And the church has been asleep, fast asleep, stone cold asleep, so that things can happen that should be awake. Us to say, wait a minute. And we just say, oh, that's the way things are. No, it isn't. It's time for us to speak up and to stand up. That doesn't mean to fight against people. People are not our enemies. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, principalities and powers. So we're standing against spiritual forces that intend the destruction of the United States, and we can see that in a variety of ways. So my challenge to you before I get into the Middle East, where the going gets a little more miry, my challenge is begin to pray extra. Ask the Lord, Lord, what would you have me pray about this country? And then be led by the Lord. And that's our only hope. So, and that's a good thing. That's a good place to be. I remember growing up in church. My father was a pastor, and I remember hearing a prayer request about Brother Smith, let's call him, who was so sick, he was beyond the help. The doctors have done all they can. All we can do now is trust God. Now, it's pretty much where we ought to start. Well, God's got us there right now. All we can do now is trust God and look for what He brings. And He's bringing big stuff. Okay, that's the editorial comment. Now let's talk about the Middle East. The United States is at war. We're in a state of war. We haven't declared war. We haven't even acknowledged war. We don't even recognize our enemy. But we're at war, a war that's being fought right now on 17 different fronts. I have two sons who will be on two of the fronts. One is there already, one is going soon. So the youngest son was in Iraq last year for 6 months. And so we know about the war that we're fighting. The administration of this country, for reasons best known to them and to God, has determined not even to recognize that we are in a state of war, that war has been declared upon us on repeated occasions, and will not so much as recognize the enemy for who it is. One of the main enemies, well, the enemy that we face is radical Islam. Now, the fact that I would use that term means that I am politically incorrect. So I warn my students when they come into class, that's the boat you're getting on. And I have been, I don't know if I still am, perhaps you could check the Al Jazeera website. I'm an Islamophobe, and there's so many people who are so desperately afraid of being named an Islamophobe, but I have been named Islamophobe and have been on their list, among others. for some years. So I haven't had a report in the last couple of years. Maybe they decided that they don't have to worry about me because I don't matter, and that would be all right. But I've been an Islamophobe and politically incorrect. Radical Islam is the enemy. To give you an example of this, the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Shams, ISIS. Now, the S at the end of ISIS is not for Syria. It's al-Shams in Arabic. And al-Shams stands for the region that is their present base of operations across northern Syria and Iraq. Al-Shams figures in their eschatology very prominently because it's part of the series of battles that lead up to the final battle. Jim, would you hand me my tea, please? Talking about the desert makes me thirsty. So, al-Shams, and now our administration wants to make it ISIL. And, where's that come from? Levant, of Iraq and Levant. Levant is a French word for the eastern end of the Mediterranean. And what they're wanting to do there is take the name away from the apocalyptic meaning of al-Shams. Look, they are Islamic. They say al-Dula al-Islamiyya, the Islamic State. Whereas our president got up and has said twice openly, they're not Islamic. And you think, well, they say they're Islamic, and he says they're not. I mean, they're Islamic. He has reasons for saying that. The point is, if he'll lie about that, what else will he lie about? That's what I was brought up to call. Remember, when you have a narrative that you have to fit everything into, you have to deal with the facts in a certain way. You have to ignore facts, you have to distort facts, and you have to invent facts. And that's what they're doing all along. They're Islamic, and they represent the final battle. People coming all over the world to ISIS, they're tearing up their passports and they're signing up to be part of the caliphate for the end of the age, the battle that's in process right there. And their intent is to bring about the end of the age, the end of the world. The letter that was in the effects of 3 of the 19 hijackers in 9/11 said, this is the day of final judgment. They believe this is the day of final judgment. And whether you believe it or not, the fact that they believe it means that they're willing to act on it. And that's very important for anybody who is out there. Now, what does that have to do with you sitting here? I mean, you're not bothering them. No, you are. The apocalyptic part of Islam, they have prophecy preachers just like we do. People who get up and say, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And they're talking about the coming of the Antichrist, Al-Dajjal. And they're talking about Al-Mahdi, their Messiah, their expected one. And so they have preaching. In fact, it's very interesting to see that a lot of their sort of tropes have been taken over from Christian apocalyptic and brought into Islam. But it's a final battle, and it's the Messiah, Al-Mahdi, against the Antichrist, and it's going to end up on the plains of Damascus, outside of in Syria, and that's where it's going to start. It will go into Israel with the destruction of Israel. Of course, their enemies have been clear for years and years. It's Israel and the Jews. And you could hardly pick a more anti-Semitic genre of literature in the world at present than Islamic apocalyptic. But things have begun to change. And they've begun to recognize, and this is where you come in. You wonder where I was going with that, right? So things have begun to change, and they've begun to notice an enemy that is now taking precedence over Jews and Israel. They're still enemies, still not to be trusted. They all got to be killed. But the people who are the number one enemies are Christians who support Israel. They call them Christian Zionists. Zionists are an enemy for them, and Christians who support the state of Israel are number one enemy now. So they are praying and cursing Christians who support Israel. And they are also killing Christians wherever they can find them. So when you see what ISIS is doing, and by the way, the media is telling you almost nothing. If you want to know what ISIS is doing to Christians, the internet is full of it if you have the stomach for it. If you have the leading from the Lord, because you have to have a certain grace to see what they're doing to Christians. And they're doing it because this is what they're going to do to all Christians sooner or later. That's what they'll do to you. So are they putting curses on you? Yeah, they are right now. And this is something I explain to people who go to minister in that part of the world. I had a nephew who went to minister in an Arab country, and I explained to him, but when you go in there, Muslim children are taught from their earliest days to put curses on other people. And so, you have to take that in consideration. He went on off. A little less than a year later, he and his whole family were back in counseling, in therapy, and he drove from the East Coast out here, and he told me, he said, "Uncle, you were right, and I was wrong." Spent a year and a half and then went back. Why? Because they came under such tremendous oppression for which they were unprepared. And Christians are under oppression right now because of what's happening out of the Middle East. That's what it has to do with us. Now, where's this going to go? It's either going to go bad or worse. There's actually no good. Is it over? No, it isn't over. So I pray and ask the Almighty, Lord, we see the end of the age. We see all these signs. Is this the end of the age? Is this it? And I hear these words over and over, and I'm telling you, as from the Lord, so you can chalk that up. I'm giving you a little more time. I'm giving you a little more time. So, how may we use this time? We may use this time to defeat these forces of evil simply because they need to be faced, confronted, and defeated. We're going too fast for you? They go over your head? Yeah. We got it. And you say, well, they don't have anything to do with us. They're over there in Iraq or wherever else. No, they have a lot to do with us, and they have a lot to do with Christians like us. The Christians in Iraq, they might not be as good at Christians as we are here in Tulsa. I guess we feel that way. At least I get the impression. No, they're Christians just like us. And they're being killed and persecuted in a way we can't imagine. And so, do we have a responsibility? Absolutely. You have a responsibility. I'm talking to you. Don't look around. Your responsibility to pray for these people, to find a way to reach out, to find a way to speak up, to find a way to be involved. We're very fortunate in this country, in this state. I mean, I grew up in Georgia, and so I am a Georgian. But Oklahoma has the best congressional delegation of any state in the Union. Yeah. And I've said that many times before. We have men as senators and congressmen, especially in District 1 here, who know what's going on and who are willing to stand. And we need to pray for them because they're under spiritual oppression and attack in a way we can't imagine. Okay. Trying to get a lot in here. Now I'm going to shift gears. Do we know what radical Islam is trying to do to the United States? What is their plan? They're not bashful. They publish this in Arabic and in English as well as a lot of other languages. What is their plan?
Political takeover.
Say again?
Political takeover.
That is eventually their plan. That is the ultimate goal. So how are they going to do that? Number one. There's going to be a test on this. Number one, they're going to try to pull down the economy of the United States. They have a variety of aims to do that. Why? They know they cannot defeat the military of the United States. In every case where they come up against the military, even in the case, we got a few hundred soldiers in Iraq, just a handful. But with their help, the Peshmerga, the Kurds, are just beating the slop out of ISIS. So they know they can't handle the military of the United States. God has blessed us. In some circles, I've had people try to fight me over this. And, take it easy, calm down. God has blessed the United States with incredible weapons of amazing precision and unbelievable lethality, and with men and women of honor and courage to manipulate those weapons. And the world can't come against it, especially Islam. While we're having problems with ISIS, it's very clear. In 2011, the President of the United States removed every troop from Iraq, pulled them out. Why? Was he advised to do that? No. Every advisor told him don't do it. But he wanted to get them out for a variety of reasons. Look, we've had troops in Korea since '53. We've had troops in Germany since '45. In every case, the troops have served as a stabilizing influence and a basis for the prosperity of those nations. If we had left troops in Iraq, that country could have been salvaged. Everybody says it's a mistake to go in there. It's easy to say that now. Oh, look, everything's going to pot. It was a mistake. No, it could have been salvaged. And certainly ISIS couldn't have risen up if we'd left troops there. So are we going to have to put troops back? We are. Now you say, well, you can easily say that. No, I've got two sons in the Army. One's already been there. They may both go back there. So I have a personal investment in what I'm saying. We're going to have to go back over there, and we're going to have to exercise some restraint. Look, the only basis for using lethal force is the fact that there are people who accept no other restraint. They will not accept a human appeal. They won't accept a reasonable argument. So you can't argue with them. You can't plead with them. You've got to stop them. And there are people right here in Tulsa. That's the case. So we've got that situation, and we're going to have to go over it. Now, when Trump was making these speeches about we're going to stop it, it's going to stop, and I thought, well, there's only one way that I know of, and that's the application of force. Now, maybe it doesn't have to be the big, broad, sweeping thing that we've seen in the past, but we're going to have to send troops on the ground to put a stop to the slaughter. So, you expect it. It's got to come. Now, we've got a lot of weapons that we can use, but they're all going to involve, to one degree or another, boots on the ground. So, the media is going to start playing that theme, boots on the ground, American soul, blah, blah. And before you start getting all head up about what the media says, remember, these are the people who will cry about a Palestinian who's killed by Israelis, while not saying a thing about Palestinians who are killed by other Palestinians. Anybody remember the letter that Ahmadinejad sent to W when he was still president? You remember that? No, that was a Dawa letter. And so he was inviting W to become a Muslim. And I think W turned him down. Don't know. But that means that they had a legal basis for killing him after that. So the Dawa is the term that I use for their whole promotion of civil discord and confusion. They want to divide public opinion against itself. They want public opinion to support the moderate Muslims in such a way that we won't lift our hand or voice against those who are radical. Now, you wonder why there are no more moderate Muslims who speak up? What happens when a moderate speaks up? There are moderate Muslims right here in Tulsa. What happens when they speak up? They're immediately attacked. Eventually, they're killed. Because by speaking up against the radicals, they become what is takfir. They become unbelievers, and it is required by every Muslim, upon every Muslim, to kill someone who goes away, who apostatizes. They're required to do it, especially the families. That's a long story. So, yeah, that's the reason you don't hear more from Muslim moderates. I remember a few years ago, got a call from a Muslim man here in town. He had spoken out. I'd been out of town, and I came back to find out that he'd spoken out against radical violence and named names. And for that, he was kicked out of the local synagogue. Anybody remember that? Anyway, he called me, asked for my help. I said, well, I'm a teacher and I'm a Christian. I don't know what I can do. But in the end, I was able to put him in touch with a group in D.C. who sent some lawyers down here, and he was reinstated. It's a long story, and I'm shortening it, but he was reinstated. But because of his, what we would call moderate sympathies, his expression, he's kicked right out of the local mosque. So, by the way, we do have a radical cell here in Tulsa now. For years and years, there was no radical cell. There was one, now there are two down in Oklahoma City, but now there's one here, I'm told by people who know. Okay, so they want to divide public opinion, and then they want, number two, to cause civil disruption that will hit the economy. And this involves attacking transportation hubs, utilities hubs, and yeah. So we can see those attacks. Have they told us they're coming? Yeah, they've told us. Are we ready for them? In some respects, we're more ready than we were before. But there's still areas where we have a ways to go. So these are going to be coordinated attacks. We've already seen that before. But they're going to attempt to bring communication to a halt and stop the flow of commerce and travel in the United States. Bring the economy to its knees. Number two, promote a civil discourse and divide public opinion. And number three, catastrophic attacks on the United States. That's still in the wind. They're still out there trying as hard as they can. The fact that they haven't so far is from Him. It's from the Almighty. I've been watching it for years, and I'm telling you, it's just amazing what God is doing to protect the United States. We tend to take it for granted. Don't do that. When you see people being captured who were plotting some terrible outrage, hey, Lord, you did that. It wasn't us. It wasn't because we're so smart. It wasn't because we're so unified. It's because He intervened and is intervening. So that's one thing that you can pray. Yeah. So what can you pray? Lord, thank you for saving the United States. Lord, bless Israel. I'll bless them that bless you. Lord, bless your people here and all around the world, especially in the Middle East. Hold them up, intercede, and when the Lord puts it in your heart, begin to pray until you feel a release. 4, Lord, bless our soldiers and security people. Give them supernatural covering of the blood of Jesus. Give them clarity of mind, connecting the dots, seeing things that they wouldn't otherwise see. And you know what? He does that very thing. Amen. So, okay. I got 5 minutes. Got a question. Mr. Waller.
Could you comment on the BDS movement, boycott, diversify, and it's running rampant on a lot of
Divestment. Boycott, divestment, sanctions, attack on Israel. It's anti-Semitic. Thank God it's being defeated even in individual states in this country. They're passing laws that forbid people to operate according to this. See, they want to criticize Israel on the basis of a variety of lies. Just outright lies. Is Israel an apartheid country? No, no way. Where do we get the word apartheid? From the South African regime that is no more. And it was apartheid. Is Israel apartheid? No. But they say that, and they say it loud enough and long enough. What is that technique called in propaganda? The big lie. Goebbels, of infamous memory, is the one who codified it. And so they got, because Israel is a apartheid state. No. Are they an occupier? No, they're not. You got people, we had a documentary that was produced about Bethlehem, talking about how bad the Israelis are. Israelis have been out of Bethlehem since '93. All the problems in Bethlehem are coming from the Palestine Authority. But, yeah. Defeat that.
How do we wake the church up? The churches here in America are silent. They say nothing, they don't teach nothing, they just let the Israeli problem go and don't even look at it.
It's a good question. I don't have an answer for you. I face it. When I say the things that I'm saying right now, a great many people, especially preachers, are very nervous. They don't want to cause problems. We don't want to, not cause a problem. The problems are there. You're just facing and speak about it. So God has to wake the church up. Somehow. Sir.
I've been doing a little research on the
That's good.
situation, where it started from, and how it split apart, and where we have the two groups that are factions from two different sides of the families, and how they've gotten to where they're at today and what they're doing. And what you said is what I have found out, is that even though we have the Muslims here in this country, basically if you don't believe the way that they believe, they don't like you. And they would just as soon kill you if you are not willing to convert to what they have. And so there's a lot of, like he was asking what the church can do, is that you need to get yourself informed about these people and what they're really doing to help to combat that, to just be informative of what it's all about, so that you understand what's going on when you're confronted. But most of the people would just as soon shut the door. After all, this is America. Nothing's going to happen to us.
One more
But
question.
they need to know.
Well, I agree with you. But the whole issue is we're coming to a point where we can no longer hide from it. And I don't know what it's going to take. I keep thinking, they got the priest in Rouen whose throat was slit. You got one after, and I keep thinking, well, this is the thing that'll make people stop and say, so far it hasn't come, but it's coming. Hope it won't be too bad. One more question? Sir, you with the glasses. Sorry, he was behind you. He's had his hand up.
Oh, here we go. I'll raise my hand three times. Why are Christian men and women who are 80 years or older not allowed to drive an automobile?
That's beyond my jurisdiction. Sir.
Okay, Rofi, well, yesterday you said to me about 10 years ago, I latched onto it and I said it. You said there are 4 things to pray for. You said, first of all, pray their secrets be revealed. Number 2.
That's based on the Bible. Every secret thing will be made known. Every hidden thing will be brought to the light. Keep going.
Second, pray they be confused.
Divide, O Lord, and confuse their tongues, from Psalm 55.
Pray for Israel. Shalom, shalom, Yerushalayim.
Yes, or Jeremiah 31. Save your people, O Lord, the remnant of Israel. Keep going.
Pray for a sound mind.
Sound mind. Because sound mind is the enemy of what? Fear. Yeah. By the way, those prayer points were put together by a friend of mine, the mighty Rick Hurst, who's now deceased. But the Lord gave those to him and me in the period following 2001, 9/11. Hey, thanks.